In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the Volti Audio Razz. But before I get into the Razz specifically, I just want to tell you a little bit about my experiences listening to Volti speakers at audio shows. And that is to say, it was always a really positive experience. They really know how to do good demos at shows. And by good demo, I mean the music's good, the sound is really good, and I want to keep listening. I'm not in a hurry to get to the next room at a show. That's what a good demo is. And a bad demo is when I can't wait to get out of there fast enough, right? Anyway, Volti has never had that problem. Now, they usually partner. I think they've always partnered with Border Patrol. They make tube electronics and also triode wire lamps for cables. So they have kind of a formula. They know how to make pretty much any, even relatively cramped hotel room sound really, really good. Now, I've wanted to review a Volti speaker for quite some time, and Greg Roberts, the owner of the company and the designer, he and I have talked many times about doing this, but it just never came together until now. And I'm having a great time living with these speakers. Not a very long period of time, but enough to know, yeah, everything I heard at the show is confirmed, and of course, at home here, it's even better. Now, Volti Audio designs and builds all of their speakers in Baxter, Tennessee. Oh, I also have to make note that Volti Audio has, are you ready, inventory of some of their speakers. Already built, already boxed up, all ready to go. And I bring this up because in my recent review of the Deckware Sarah, a lot of the comments were based on the frustration that, yeah, I want a Deckware Sarah, but it might have to wait 2 years to get it. With Volti Audio, if things line up, you can have instant gratification and get yours shipped the day that you buy the speakers. That's really cool. As for the cabinets, these are birchwood ply, 1 inch thick birchwood ply, and the bracing inside the cabinet is also 1 inch thick birchwood ply. No MDF is used in the design, in Volti Audio designs. When I review speakers, I always ask for pictures of the crossover network, which is hidden inside the speaker. And I almost never receive pictures of the crossover network. But when I asked Greg Roberts to send me the pictures, damn, he was right on. He sent me the pictures because he's really proud of his crossover. First, because it uses really good components, the inductors, the capacitors, really top-notch stuff, and it's point-to-point, no printed circuit board, and it's on wood, not a piece of plastic. So anyway, here is the picture of the crossover network. And speaking of the crossover network, on the back of the speaker are a series of resistors. And those resistors are available to the user to change the tonal balance of the mid-range and tweeter. It's easy to do, especially because it's accessible right there on the back of the speaker. And if you're a tinkering type and you want to play with the sound, you can have fun with that. So the Razz stands 40 inches tall. The impedance is an easy to drive 6 ohms. Sensitivity is on the high side. It's 97 dB. And all that 1 inch thick birch plywood makes for a heavy speaker. It weighs 90 pounds. Now, on the bottom of the speaker, you will not find spikes. There's no spikes on the bottom of the speakers. There's felt pads. And I was very, very happy to see those felt pads because that meant I could move the speakers around on the floor, slide them around on the floor really, really easily. When I have speakers that are on spikes, I have to bend, it's a whole dance with the speaker to get them to move. But here, slide them into place, fantastic. And that also means, at least if you have bare floors, that you can move the speakers easily out into the room when you're listening and then slide them back when you're not. Because you do want to have these speakers at least 2 feet away from the wall behind them. I was going for 3 feet behind. Well, actually not the wall, but the records and books behind the Razz speakers. So looking at the speaker, at the very bottom on the front baffle there, you'll see a large bass port. Above that, a 12-inch woofer. It's ported, obviously, by that port. Above that, a large mid-range horn that has a 2-inch compression driver, and then above that, a 1-inch compression horn tweeter. As for Razz pricing, this is interesting. Now, with the standard veneers, the prices start at $7,500 a pair, and there are many veneer options. If you look at the website, you'll see lots of ways to go, and a lot of those are more than $7,500 a pair. But here's something else. There is another much less expensive option, which Volti calls the Decorator Razz, meaning it is unfinished birch. And that's what my review samples were, unfinished birch. And I thought they were really, really beautiful, just as they are. And those are $5,500 a pair, a savings of $2,000 a pair. That's very significant. Now, if you buy them, you would probably want to finish them in some way or just leave them natural as they are. But in any case, it's nice to have that alternative way to go and save a large chunk of money. Before I get into the specifics of the sound, I know you're eager to hear that, I just want to tell you right up front that if you have never lived with a well-designed horn speaker, you do not know what you're missing. I mean, most audiophiles have only lived with box speakers, meaning a box with the drivers mounted flush to the front baffle. That's called a direct radiating speaker. Of course, some of you have magnepans and some of you do have horns, but I'm talking about the bulk of you, most of you have only lived with box speakers. And living with a horn speaker, a well-designed horn speaker, you just hear levels of energy and dynamics and power that doesn't really happen the same way with a box speaker. Box speakers, to me, almost always compress the sound. They make it dynamically smaller, less expressive. Yes, that's the word. It's less expressive because it's being squeezed out. And with the horn speakers, which are generally lower in distortion for a given volume level, that expressiveness shines through. And that's why it's worth giving them a try. If you've never lived with one, I want you to have an open mind about what horn speakers are. And don't tell me about the ones you heard in 1982 and they sounded really, like that, and they sounded very... No, that was then, this is now. They're much better now. One of the most amazing things about living with a horn speaker, a well-designed horn speaker, is how when you listen to very compressed music, it sounds less compressed. It's more dynamic than you think it is. I've noticed that every time I listen to a great horn, I can listen with more pleasure to compressed music than I can with any other type of speaker. That's really interesting. Or I should say any really high sensitivity speaker, meaning over 95 dB sensitive. You can listen to compressed music and not feel that crunch, that little edge, that hardness from compression. It's still there, but it's less annoying. It bothers you less. I do want to talk about this amazing Van Morrison record, his best live album. It's called Too Late to Stop Now. It's from the early 1970s with a big band with strings and horns and stuff. It's a great record, and Van was at the absolute peak of his powers as a vocalist. And that's where the Razz really delivers that kind of power, that presence of an amazing singer. And for amplifiers, well, I was going back and forth between the Deckware Sarah, the 300B 8-watt per channel amplifier, and also the Linear Tube Audio 40, which is actually 50 watts a channel. And they both did it. Now, of course, the LTA being more powerful could play louder and was even more dynamic. But that just big sound field, that big space with all these musicians on stage was incredible with both of them. But yes, the more powerful amp, even with a very high sensitivity speaker, sounds more powerful once you start to play it loud. If you're the kind of person, and I keep hearing from you guys that you never play music loud, yeah, this speaker is sense enough that it will work really well with low-powered amplifiers. I really like the sound of the first watt SIT3, which is 18 watts into 8 ohms, That and 30 watts into 4. That amp was a magical combination with the Razz. It was a bigger portal. I just heard more into it, even than the tube amplifiers. That combination, SIT3 and the Razz, was magical. And sticking with the Van Morrison recording, those strings, that brass, they just had a life to them. And body, it wasn't just like hearing the clarity, it was hearing the instruments themselves, like hearing around each one, that kind of sound. Very nicely played by the Razz. And I also did some pedal to the metal, loud listening with the Pass XA25. You know, another amp I had great success with was this one. This is the Fez Silver Luna Prestige. It's a push-pull EL34 amp. I believe it's 35 watts a channel. It's made in Poland. It's physically a beautiful amplifier, and the sound isn't super tubey, meaning warm or full. It's actually very, very clear. The bass control over those 12-inch woofers was like amazing. I'm thinking this is a tube amplifier. It's really locking in on those woofers. And the top end was sweet, pure, you know, not super extended, but very, very satisfying. You know, I lived for 3 years with a pair of Klipsch Cornwall 4s. Those are much bigger speakers, but they are about the same price, $6,600 a pair. They had 15-inch woofers, a much larger cabinet, and they did more push. They sounded bigger and weightier. I didn't have them here for a direct comparison, but I know that sounds so well in this room. I can say with some assurance that, yeah, if you have a big room and you really want to max out, I would have you consider the Cornwall 4s as a viable option. I think that the Razz exceeds the Cornwall in terms of that mid-range lushness, that body, that soul. I think it does that better than I got out of the Cornwalls. But the Cornwalls, in terms of power, delivery, and punch and weight, the Cornwall 4s are the better speaker. You know, I really love the Pixies, but I also like Frank Black's solo albums, specifically this one, which is, you know, demos and stuff, stripped down production. And the way he handles Where Is My Mind, the bass on that track is extraordinary. And on Planet of Sound, there's an extended guitar, freak out, fuzzy distortion, but the good kind. And I just cranked it up. And this is with the Fez amplifier, the EL34 amp, 35 watts. And I was just in heaven, man. I was just digging the sound. And then I'd close my eyes and I'd open my eyes and think, yeah, it's just these relatively small speakers filling this very large room with this incredible sound. I love my job. And when things like this happen and everything lines up perfectly, yeah, this is good. Okay, we're going to round the bend here and so Steve, what do you really think? What do you really think of the Volti Audio Razz? I think this is a terrific speaker. Just the build of it, the build quality that is, the sound. It's a very easy to listen to speaker, but it is highly energetic and exciting. So it kind of makes you happy because it doesn't sound like it's working very hard. You can play it very, very quietly. Should have mentioned this earlier. You can play it very quietly and feel satisfied, like you don't feel like you have to turn it up. When I say very quietly, I mean in like the 50 dB range. You can play it very quietly and not feel that I want to turn it up, and of course medium loud, and then when you push it, it just gives it to you without any sense of strain that box speakers usually do when you play them at, let's say, over 90 dB. You just feel them, let's say, tightening up, because as you play them louder, the distortion is increasing. And horns do that less because of the efficiency of the horn, meaning the drivers do not have to work as hard to play a given sound pressure level. So they are inherently lower distortion than direct radiating speakers. And that's what makes the Razz work so well, and the overall design of the speaker. And I think it's kind of beautiful. I mean, that unfinished birch ply, the lightness. I like light woods. Yeah, if I own these speakers, I would just wouldn't do anything that would make the wood any darker than it is. I like that look. It's very clean. Anyway, yeah, I dig the Razz. I definitely do. Speaking of digging things, it is now time for the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. Hey, this one comes to us from Jens. He's 44 years old. He lives in Germany, and he's been an audiophile for a while now, and he's had some interesting experiences. But as for the system, the speakers are Dolly LCR Opticon 2s, and the sub is a Rel T5X. The amp, that beautiful amplifier, is a hybrid Pathos Classic 1. Turntable is a project debut Carbon Evo with a Grado Reference Master 2 cartridge, and there's also an iFi Zen phono preamp. The DAC is a DAC Magic from Cambridge, and the streamer is a Wilm Mini. Anyway, thanks, Jens. Alrighty, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the Audiophiliac. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please consider joining and supporting my Patreon. To do so is super easy. The address is on the screen right now. You can contribute in dollars, pounds, euros, and most other currencies. You can join for a month or two and then split, or you can stick around for years. And at the top tiers, you and I will have a conversation every month at the beginning of the month. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it many times more, I love having conversations with the people who watch this show. And by the way, a lot of times we don't even talk about audio. We talk about other stuff, other cool things, watches, cars, cameras, whatever. It's always fun. And with that, I can say if you like a given episode, please give it a thumbs up, please give it a like, and also please subscribe as we're inching slower, but we're getting there, to 250,000 subscribers by the end of this year, I hope, with your help. And with that, I can say my work here is at last complete. Thank you again for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.